Our first storyteller is Steve Doubt. Now, Steve has been telling stories ever since the dog ate his homework. And he believes that stories are in the human DNA, that it's stories that remind us that we're connected one to another. Steve's story is titled Smiley's Frog.
There was this feller named Smiley, and he was the bettingest man you ever did see. He would bet on anything with anybody. And if he couldn't find somebody to bet against him, he'd switch sides. If he saw a couple birds sitting there on the fence, he would bet which one would fly off first. If he saw a cloud in the sky, he would bet whether there was rain in that cloud and when it'd rain and how much. For all that, he was pretty darn lucky. There was not a man in Calaveras County who had not lost at least one paycheck to that feller. You know, Smiley had him this friend named Walker. And Walker's wife took powerful ill. One day, Smiley says to Walker, "How's your wife doing?" Walker gets all kind of teared up. He says, "Oh, that poor woman. She'd been struggling awful hard, and I was afraid we were going to lose her there for a while, but lately she's been feeling a mite better, and I think she just might pull through." Well, it was automatic. Smiley couldn't help himself. He said, "I'll bet you $2 she don't pull through." Now, you might imagine, that made Walker kind of mad, just the fact that Smiley would think that he would bet on the life of his own wife. Then later on, he got mad again. She did pull through. He realized he would have won that bet. Well, Smiley had himself this old nag of a racehorse, and she was the worst piece of horse flesh you ever did see. She always had something wrong with her, whooping cough, or she was lame, had something like that, and got to the place where the fellers down at the track felt so bad for that old bucket of glue that they would give her a 200-yard head start every race. But even at that, she struggled. That whole field would pass her by, and she'd be in the back there just struggling along, trying to stay upright and pointed in the right direction. And then somehow, toward the end of the race, she'd get all excited like, and them spindly legs would start flying every which way. And she'd start huffing, blowing her nose, and she'd end up winning that race by half a head every time. Yeah. Smiley had himself this old rat terrier. He had a couple of them fighting roosters. He had these cockroaches from Madagascar. And if you come up with anything at all, he'd figure out a way to match you on that. Well, one time, Smiley catched himself this frog. And he decided he was going to educate that frog, so he took that frog in his backyard, and for 3 months, he did nothing but teach that frog how to jump. And that frog would jump up in the air, it would spin around and flip, and then plop down on all fours, just like a cat. The way Smiley taught that frog, he pointed out flies to him. And that frog could nail a fly in midair from here to the back of the room. Yeah. Smiley called that frog Daniel Webster. Got to the place where all Smiley had to do was say, "Flies, Daniel." That frog would take to jumping all over the place. And even at that frog was just as sweet and as humble as any frog you ever met. That was until Smiley started winning a lot of money with that frog. Oh, he was making so much money, he took them everywhere. And he started pampering that frog, treating it like it was royalty. Made this little box, lined that box with velvet, made a little tin foil crown, put it on that frog's head. And that frog started thinking it was pretty hot stuff. Everybody wanted to take both of them down a peg or two. Well, one day Smiley was sitting there in the bar, and he's got Daniel Webster in his box there on the bar in front of him. This stranger comes up. Stranger looks in that box, looks over at Smiley, says, so what might you have in the box there? Smiley says, well, I might have a pigeon, might have a turtle, but it ain't, it's just a frog. So it is. So what's the frog good for then? Well, this here frog is Daniel Webster, and he's good for one thing. He can outjump any frog in Calaveras County. Well, I don't see nothing different about that frog than any other frog I ever seen. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't know nothing about frogs. But I got my opinion, and I got $40. Says this here frog can outjump any frog in Calaveras County. Well, I'm not from Calaveras County, and I don't have me a frog, but if I was and I did, I would take that bet. I'll tell you what, there's a bog on down the road. I'll go down there and catch your frog. You hold this box, I'll be right back. Well, at this point, Smiley is ready to go, but old Walker steps in. He goes right to that stranger feller. He says, so now if Smiley goes down that bog, he catches a frog. How do you know he's not going to catch the weakest frog he can find? And before Smiley can get mad, he turns to Smiley. He says, now Smiley, if that stranger feller holds that box of yours, how do you know that he's not going to do something to Daniel Webster while you're gone? So now he's got both of them. And he says, you know, if you go down to the track and race those horses, the owners don't race their own horses. They get jockeys. What you fellers need is a couple of frog jockeys. Now, I'll jockey old Daniel Webster here. We get somebody to jockey that stranger feller's frog, and you can go down together and pick out a frog at that bog that you both agree on. So they thought that was a good idea, so they took off. As soon as they were gone, Walker turns to the bar and he says, fellers, go out and round up some town folk. We'll have a big old event here. And he grabs me, he says, let's go over to the hardware store. Well, we went over to the hardware store, we got a couple of ropes, and we got some chalk to draw out that start and finish line. And then Walker takes Daniel Webster over to the ammunition counter, and he says, you go on ahead, I'll be along in a minute. Well, I didn't think nothing of it. I went out and I started laying out that track, and by the time I got it all laid out, half the town was there. Well, those fellers come back from the bog, and they're sitting there on the porch, smoking cigars like the owners they were. I got that stranger feller's frog, laid him down there on the starting line, and Walker was taking care of old Daniel Webster. He put him down there on the starting line, and Smiley stood up. He did a countdown. When he got to 1, we catched them frogs right on the back end to get them started. Well, my frog, that stranger feller's frog, goes jumping on down the track, just lively as can be, and Daniel Webster just sits there solid as a church. Well, my frog won that race, that stranger fella's frog. And I go to pick up Daniel Webster, and bless my bees if that frog don't weigh 5 pounds. Well, Walker shushed me, grabs Daniel Webster, turns his back on Smiley, turns that frog upside down, and that frog belches out a double handful of quail shot. Walker turns back around, says, Smiley, I don't know what happened. Must have been old Daniel Webster here. Got to pining away for you because you were missing and decided he didn't want to jump. Well, at that frog jumped off of his hand, flew halfway across the street there, plopped down in Smiley's lap. Well, that stranger feller went up to Smiley and pointed down at Daniel Webster and said, like I said, I don't see nothing about that frog any different than any other frog I ever seen. And then he gets that $40, he holds it up and says, come on, fellers, drinks are on Smiley. Well, you might think that after a humiliating defeat like that in front of the whole town, that a feller would swear off betting, at least for a little while. But the next time I saw Smiley, he had this yeller one-eyed cow. He's walking him down Main Street. Cow's only got 3 legs. I have no idea what he's doing with that cow, but I do know that he's working up a bet of some sort. And that is my adaptation of Smiley's Frog, also known as the notorious Jumping Frog of Calaveras County. Thank you.